The hospital room was quiet, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the sterile, echoing kind. The kind that pressed against your ears like a secret waiting to explode. My body was sore in places I didn't know could feel pain, stitched, from the laparoscopic incisions and swollen with fluid. I could feel the ache blooming beneath the bandages like a warning. It was my 5th day post-op. What was supposed to be a routine outpatient procedure turned into an unexpected stay when I developed complications and spiked a fever. I hadn't seen the outside world since they wheeled me into surgery. My phone had been silent for hours. I barely had the strength to lift it before today, until it buzzed under my pillow. At first, I ignored it. Probably one of those automated appointment confirmations or some spam pharmacy text. But then it buzzed again. And again. I reached for it, slowly, clumsily, like every joint had forgotten how to move. The light from the screen pierced my eyes. New messages. From Evelyn, next-door neighbor. I hadn't heard from Evelyn in months, not since she'd asked to borrow a ladder when her smoke alarm battery died. She was friendly in the hallway, distant otherwise. So her name lighting up my phone now? That wasn't nothing, Evelyn. Hey, just checking in. Saw movers outside your place earlier. Everything okay? Evelyn. Your sister was with them. I thought, maybe you were moving. Evelyn. Sorry if I'm overstepping. She said you were staying with her now, and they were changing your locks. I blinked, stared, read the messages again. The room tilted. The pulse oximeter beeped louder for a second. Or maybe it was just the roaring in my ears. They were changing my locks. I sat up too fast and immediately regretted it. Pain stabbed through my ribs and up my side. I winced and pressed the call button, breathing shallow. My brain tried to make sense of Evelyn's words, but it couldn't. They didn't fit anywhere. Didn't belong in any world I recognized. My apartment wasn't big, but it was mine. It was the one thing I'd built by myself. Every throw pillow, every cup in the cupboard, every creaky drawer was part of my freedom. I hadn't even been gone a week, and Layla was letting movers in? I called her. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I tried my mom. No answer. My hands were shaking now, part rage, part weakness. I leaned forward, trying to breathe through it, to stay grounded. My body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, but the adrenaline was rising, quick and cold like water up my spine. I texted Evelyn. Me. What do you mean changing the locks? Did you see which company it was? Evelyn. Sorry, no name on the van. They were just finishing up when I came back. She had your plants in boxes. Said you gave her permission? Permission? My lips parted in disbelief. I'd barely spoken to Layla since she visited me the day before surgery. She brought me a smoothie and told me to relax, don't stress. She didn't mention anything about my apartment. She didn't ask to borrow it. Didn't ask if she could stay. Didn't ask me anything. And now she was in it, living in it, changing the locks like I didn't exist. A nurse came in with a fresh IV bag and took one look at me. You okay? She asked, her tone shifting fast from routine to alert. No, I said, my voice too calm to match the storm inside. I need to go home. Now. You can't leave, she said gently. You just started keeping your fever down. And your blood pressure. I don't care, I cut in. My voice cracked. Something's wrong. I'm being pushed out of my own apartment. The nurse hesitated. Her eyes softened. Can you explain what's going on? I handed her the phone. She read Evelyn's messages, then looked at me like something just clicked. I'll call your doctor, she said, but you'll need someone to check in on you if you leave. I nodded, not caring how that would happen yet. I just knew this. I wasn't going to lie in this bed, drugged and stitched up, while my sister moved into my apartment without my knowledge. Not without consequences. Not without a fight. I'd trusted Layla with everything. I even left her a copy of the key months ago during a minor plumbing emergency. She said she'd return it. I never followed up. And now that trust had become a weapon. As the nurse left the room, I looked around at the sterile, impersonal walls. I had thought the worst part of this week would be the surgery. I was wrong. The worst part was learning that while I was cut open and stitched back together, someone I trusted was already rearranging my life and locking me out of it. It took 6 phone calls and 1 terse conversation with the floor supervisor before they let me discharge myself. I had to sign a liability waiver against medical advice. It read in cold print. I didn't care. The moment I was upright and dressed, I called a car and stood outside the hospital doors in borrowed slippers, my body trembling from effort, my stitches pulling tight with every step. The hospital gown under my hoodie clung to my back with sweat. It was almost embarrassing, how broken I looked standing there like a ghost outside the ER. But I wasn't thinking about dignity. I was thinking about my apartment, my keys, my sister, and how far she had gone behind my back. The Uber pulled up. I barely spoke the address before I slumped into the back seat. The city blurred past in gray smears of traffic and rain. I could see my reflection in the window. Pale, gaunt, eyes sunken from the hospital lights. I didn't even recognize myself. By the time the car rolled to a stop on my block, my pulse had doubled. The driver asked if I needed help. I said no. I was halfway up the stairs when I paused. My heart dropped. There, on the 3rd floor landing, right in front of my apartment door, were Layla's suitcases. Expensive ones. 3 of them. One was half unzipped, a bright orange tag hanging from the handle like she'd just flown, back from a luxury resort. The door was closed. The lock, new. And the welcome mat was different, not mine. It had a quote on it in gold script. Home is where the heart is. I stared at it in disbelief. I had never owned something that cheesy. Knocked hard, no answer. I knocked again. My side flared with pain. Footsteps. Then the door opened, just a crack. Layla's perfectly blow-dried hair peeked out, followed by her signature too-sweet voice. Oh my God, Harper. What are you doing here? You should still be resting. I didn't say anything, just stared. She opened the door wider. She was wearing my robe, the lavender one. The one I kept hidden behind the closet door. I thought you were in until Friday, she added, glancing over my shoulder like she was hoping I was alone. I checked myself out, I said. My voice was hoarse. Because Evelyn said you were here, with movers. She gave a little shrug like it was no big deal. I was helping. I didn't think you'd mind. Didn't think I'd mind that you moved into my apartment while I was in a hospital bed? Her eyes widened, feigning innocence. Don't be dramatic, Harper. I didn't move in. I'm just here until you're back on your feet. You can't live alone like this. What if you fall? You don't even have a proper walker. You changed the locks. She hesitated. For safety. Yours. No, Layla. For access. You didn't want me to come back. Her tone shifted, a thread of ice beneath the warmth. Look, Mom and I talked. She agreed it made more sense for you to stay at my place until you're better. We're just trying to take care of you. By we, she meant her, because our mother hadn't called me once since the surgery. I stared past her into the apartment. The living room was rearranged. My books were stacked in boxes. My tea kettle wasn't on the stove. It was missing entirely. "Where's my stuff?" I asked slowly. "Relax," she said. "It's safe. I just packed up some things to make space." "You packed up my things in my apartment?" Now her eyes narrowed, just for a second. "You're not being grateful, Harper. I'm helping you. You should be with family anyway." That was the moment something broke, because that word, family, didn't mean love anymore. Not in this context. It meant control. It meant entitlement. It meant this wasn't just about helping. It was about replacing me while I was too weak to fight back. I didn't say anything more. My hand slid into my hoodie pocket and wrapped around the old apartment lease I'd printed. Before my surgery, the one still in my name, despite whatever story Layla had told the building manager. I had brought it for emergencies. I didn't know I'd need it so soon. "I'm going to give you 1 day," I said. 1 day to get out. Otherwise, I'll call the building, call the police, and I'll tell them everything, including where you got the key. Her smile froze, just a flicker. "You don't want to make a scene," she said quietly. "Oh," I said, stepping back. "You have no idea what I want now." I didn't go back inside. I wasn't strong enough to carry a fight that night. But the next day, Layla was going to learn that the girl she underestimated, the sister she thought would stay quiet, wasn't going to play nice anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Not just because of the pain in my side, or the nausea from coming off the pain meds too fast, but because of the quiet, the kind of angry, sharp silence that fills your lungs when you've been erased from your own life. I stayed at a budget hotel 2 subway stops away. It wasn't much. The walls were thin, the sheets smelled like bleach, and the window wouldn't open. But it was mine. At least temporarily. I sat in bed all night with a heating, pad against my stomach and the lease in my lap. Every now and then, I'd read the first line over and over again, like it was a prayer I was holding on to. The undersigned tenant, Harper Lynn. Still my name. Still my place. Still mine. The next morning, I wrapped my incision tight, put on my cleanest hoodie, and walked slowly to the building management office 2 floors below my unit. My hand was still shaking from weakness, but my voice? Steady. Doug, the manager, looked up from his desk with his usual blank face. "Oh, hey, Harper, you back?" I didn't bother with pleasantries. "I want to know why my locks were changed while I was recovering from surgery, and who authorized it." He blinked, confused, or pretending to be. "Well, I assumed you gave permission," he said. "Your sister had your key. She said you'd moved in with her temporarily, and that you wanted her to sublet. She had a signed note." My mouth fell open. A note? He turned his screen toward me. There it was, scanned in, a 1-paragraph letter, signed in my name. Except, I never wrote it, never signed it, not once. "She forged my signature," I said, barely breathing. "And you let her in based on that?" Doug shifted, uncomfortable now. "Look, I didn't know," She said you were in recovery and she seemed pretty together. And she had the key. You gotta understand, people sublet all the time in this building. But they don't steal the leaseholder's identity to do it. I pulled the original lease from my folder, highlighted the section about unauthorized subleasing, and slapped it on the desk. I'm the tenant of record, not her, not anyone else. If she's not gone by tomorrow, I'll have the building liable for unlawful occupation, and I'll involve the police. Doug looked like he was shrinking in his chair. I'll talk to her, he mumbled. No, I will. By the time I reached my apartment again, I was limping, my body threatening to collapse under me, but my mind sharper than ever. I stood outside my own door, heart hammering. I knocked. This time, Layla answered right away. She was wearing a white sweater I hadn't seen in years, one of Mom's old knits. Her makeup was perfect, of course, and she didn't even flinch when she saw the manila folder under my arm. You're back again, she said, her voice too calm. Don't play dumb, I said. You forged my name. You filed a false sublet letter. You've changed the locks without consent. She gave a theatrical sigh. Harper, you're not strong enough to handle all this right now. You should be focused on healing. I am healing, I said. From the idea that I ever trusted you, she blinked. I spoke to Doug, I went on, and I showed him the real lease, which is still under my name, and which says unauthorized subletting means eviction. That includes forged documents. Her lips parted. Slight twitch at the corner, but she covered it fast. Look, she said, I just needed a break. My apartment's being fumigated, and you were out of it. I figured it was fine. It's not fine. So what? You want to throw your own sister out? After everything I've done for you? I let that question hang in the air. Because no, she hadn't done anything for me. She'd done things to me. And now, she was about to lose the comfort she stole. Start packing, I said. You have until tonight. Layla crossed her arms. And if I don't, then I'll call the police, and I'll bring this lease, and the forged document, and I'll press charges. Her expression cracked for just a second, 1 second too long. That's when I knew she believed me. She slammed the door, and I walked back down the hall, each step burning, but my spine straighter than it had been in weeks. Because I wasn't done yet. Taking back my apartment was just the beginning. By evening, my hallway was filled with noise. The kind of noise I used to associate with moving days. Thuds, the squeak of duct tape, muttered swearing. Only this time, it wasn't mine. And I was watching from the stairwell. Quiet, still sore but no longer fragile. Layla was dragging boxes toward the elevator in my hallway like a woman preparing for exile. Her jaw clenched tight, her movements stiff with performative indignation. As if I was the villain. As if I had invaded her home. She didn't say anything when I passed her on the way up. I didn't either. We were past words, past denial, past fake smiles. She knew she'd lost. What she didn't know was that I'd only just begun. Once I was back inside, I stood in the center of the living room. It felt foreign. Like someone had tried to copy my life from memory and gotten it just wrong enough to disturb me. My furniture had been rearranged. My desk was missing. My pantry was cleaned out. Replaced with a brand of expensive protein bars Layla always pretended not to eat. My framed photos were stacked in a milk crate beside the couch like they didn't belong on the walls anymore. She hadn't just moved in. She'd started erasing me, piece by piece. And that's when I opened my closet and saw it my suitcase, the one I kept for travel. With the tag still from my last trip to Chicago, it was open. Rummaged through. My sweater's missing. She had started packing my things for me, like she planned to make my absence permanent. That's when I sat down at the kitchen counter and opened the Notes app on my phone. Document, things she took, set of silver measuring spoons, heirloom from Grandma. Lavender robe, found, worn by Layla. Desk lamp, missing my checkbook. Where is this? The spare key jar, gone password folder from desk drawer. Gone jewelry box, was locked, now empty. Old iPad, also missing. I stared at the list, my stomach turning. This wasn't just entitlement. This was theft. Calculated, silent, cold, and she thought I wouldn't notice. Wouldn't fight back. I spent the next 2 days recovering, but not in the way Layla expected. I wasn't curled in bed with tissues, lamenting betrayal. I was building my response. I went through every drawer, every closet, every forgotten storage bin, and every time I found something missing or tampered with, I added it to the growing document. She had even gone through my digital records, deleted emails about my surgery prep, removed documents from my Google Drive. She had logged in. She had pretended to be me, and the more I uncovered, the more I realized this wasn't spur of the moment. Layla hadn't just impulsively moved in. This was planned. She had prepared, which meant she was hiding something deeper. So I checked one last thing. I logged into my bank account. It asked for 2-step verification. The text went to my phone. But the backup email? LaylaLynn.realestate@gmail.com, my hands clenched around the phone. I hadn't added that. I hadn't even known it existed. She had accessed my account and added herself as the secondary recovery. That's why I missed an alert while I was in the hospital. That's why there was a transaction I didn't recognize. $1,600 transfer. Outgoing, labeled, loan payback. She'd sent money, my money, to herself. I stood in my living room, staring at the quiet walls. The fight wasn't over. No, this was just a false ending. A slow retreat so she could avoid confrontation. But I wasn't going to let her slink away and get comfortable. She'd tried to change the locks on my life. Now I was going to lock her out of every door she thought she had the key to. I woke up early the next morning with one clear thought. I wasn't going to let Layla get away with this quietly. Not with a shrug, not with silence, and definitely not with a smirk from the passenger seat of some luxury car paid for with my stolen money. She had changed my locks. So now I was going to start changing everything she thought she had control of. The first step was the bank. I showed up, in person, bruised and healing but focused. I brought a folder with documents, hospital discharge forms, the lease, copies of my ID, and a screenshot of the unauthorized email address listed in my recovery options. The woman at the desk, Rachel, blinked when I slid everything across to her. She added herself to my recovery list. I said, "While I was in post-op recovery, I can give you the hospital intake dates if you want." Rachel looked at the email address. "She doesn't have joint access to your account?" "No." She forged it. Rachel nodded slowly. "We're going to open a fraud case. You'll be refunded, and that account will be frozen during the investigation. And the recovery settings? We'll remove the unauthorized email right now." As she typed, I sat quietly, watching the digital paper. Trail disappear, one click at a time. Layla thought I wouldn't notice, that I'd be too weak, too distracted. But she underestimated what silence breeds when someone's backed into a corner. By the end of the afternoon, I'd also done this. Changed every password I had. Email, bank, Netflix, Wi-Fi, called my insurance company to lock down my account, flagged my credit report with an identity theft alert, reported the unauthorized sublet, fraud to the tenants' union, submitted a digital report to the IRS tip line for undeclared income if she was using my address for any write-offs or credit fraud, and submitted a quiet, private legal inquiry with a friend of a friend attorney named Marisol, who specialized in civil identity and property disputes. "You've already got a strong case," Marisol said over the phone. "She used your apartment for personal gain, accessed your bank account, and forged documentation. Even without pressing charges, she's open to liability. And if I do press charges, she'll never touch a real estate license again, or a loan application, or even a lease. Not without this showing up." I nodded. My heart didn't pound with revenge. Not yet. It just steadied. I was reclaiming my life. One digital brick at a time. That night, I logged into our family's group chat, the one Layla had created last year when she wanted to plan Mom's birthday party and didn't want to deal with calling people. I hadn't spoken there in weeks. Not since before the hospital. But now I sent one message. "Harper. Hey. Just a heads up. Layla moved into my apartment without permission while I was in the hospital, changed the locks, transferred my money, forged my signature. I've filed fraud reports, just keeping receipts. No emoji, no anger. Just fact." I watched the chat go quiet, then one typing bubble, then another, then silence. Typical. Later that night, Layla called. I let it ring out the first time. The second time I picked up. Her voice was sharp. No more sweetness. "What are you trying to do?" she snapped. "You made me look like a criminal in front of Mom." "You are a criminal," I said calmly. "I just showed the evidence. You told the building, the bank, the family. Yep. You're blowing this way out of proportion." "No, Layla. I'm just reacting to the proportions you created. You opened the floodgate. I'm just walking through." I paused, letting the silence wrap around her confusion. "You could have asked. You could have helped, but you took instead. You stole, and now I'm just returning what's mine, piece by piece." "You're not going to win this," she whispered. "Oh," I said with a slow breath. "I already did." 3 weeks later, Layla hosted an open house. Not for herself, but as a realtor. It was a posh townhome in a neighborhood she always bragged about breaking into. The kind of place with glass railings, overpriced candle staging, and clients who ask questions like, "But is it smart fridge compatible?" I knew about it because her agency sent out invites via a newsletter. What they didn't know was that the woman Layla had tried to erase had rebuilt herself, one documented lie at a time, and was ready to step out of the shadows. I dressed intentionally that day. No makeup, pale from recovery, stitches healed but still visible under my collar. I wore the same hoodie Layla mocked before my surgery, soft with wear and stitched at the pocket. But I walked in with the calm of a woman who had nothing to lose, because everything had already been stolen once. There were already a few guests inside when I arrived. Layla was near the stairs, smiling through gritted teeth at a couple in their 40s as she pointed out crown moldings and the charm of original flooring. She didn't see me at first, but then she turned and froze. For just a second, a flicker. Then the fake smile snapped back on like a stage light. Harper. What a surprise. I stepped closer, matching her tone. Didn't know open houses were open to criminals now. A woman near the kitchen turned at the word. Layla's neck stiffened. I held up my phone. This is the police report I filed, just for context. Thought you might want to know before your next client runs a background check. Her voice dropped. You need to leave. Actually, I said, I was thinking I'd stay and let everyone know what you do to family while they're in surgery. You have no proof. I tapped the screen again. Forged lease, bank transfer, identity fraud, and a theft list of over 20 personal items, some of which I found listed on your Facebook marketplace. Her face drained. You've lost it. No, I lost my apartment, my savings, my privacy. You just lost your mask. There was murmuring now. One man glanced at his wife and whispered something under his breath. Layla's boss, a sleek woman in red heels, came out from the hallway. Everything all right here, all right? She asked. I smiled. Just reminding my sister about the consequences of breaking and entering. And embezzling. Embezzling. While I was in the hospital, I added. Recovering from surgery. She moved into my apartment. Changed. The locks. Drained my account. And wore my dead grandmother's jewelry to brunch. Gasps. One man put his coffee down. The silence was heavy, the kind that hangs right before someone decides to believe the story they're hearing, and Layla saw it, in their eyes, the doubt, the shift. I'll go, I said, nodding to the boss. Just thought you should know who's showing your homes. And I walked out, not with triumph, not yet, but with something far better. Control. That night, Layla's Instagram went private. The agency removed her name from their site within 48 hours. Mom didn't call, but Dad sent a quiet message. Dad. I didn't know the full story, I'm sorry. Proud of you for standing up. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. A week passed. I thought it was over. The open house humiliation, the deleted accounts, the fallout from the building management office where Doug, red-faced and sweaty, left a voicemail saying Layla was no longer welcome on the property. And still, something didn't feel finished. You know that unease? That subtle, sour breath in the room, like someone just lied, but you haven't figured out about what yet? That's how I felt every time I passed the mailroom. Until one morning, I opened my box and found a letter I wasn't supposed to receive. It was addressed to H. Lynn, but in handwriting I didn't recognize. The return address was a bank I didn't use anymore. Inside was a single page, statement of account, final balance, and under it, approved mortgage application, cosigner, Harper Lynn Property, 2120 West Maple Drive. I stared at it, trying to force sense into the numbers. $428,000, approved, with my name. It hit me then. Layla hadn't just stolen my apartment, my money, or my identity. She had used my financial history, my credit, to buy something else. And she'd done it behind my back. I checked the date on the paperwork. It was dated 2 weeks after my surgery, right around the time she claimed she was just helping with the apartment. I felt the cold crawl down my arms like ice in my veins. By evening, I had the address pulled up on Zillow. A staged photo of the house loaded on the screen. 2 stories, white shutters, black trim, modern renovation, Fresh paint, granite counters. Dug deeper. Layla hadn't just put in an offer. She'd moved in. There were tagged posts on her old Twitter account. A blurry group photo of her and her boyfriend on the porch. The caption, "New Beginnings." My name wasn't mentioned, but I saw the smile in her eyes. It wasn't joy. It was the thrill of getting away with something no one was supposed to notice. I called Marisol. "You're going to want to hear this," I said, pacing the apartment. "Bye." The next morning, we were in motion. Marisol filed a formal dispute with the bank, claiming identity fraud and unauthorized co-signature. We attached hospital records, IP logs, and screenshots of my email showing zero access or correspondence about the loan. I wasn't asking for her house. I didn't need it. But Layla was about to learn the cost of buying something with someone else's name. It doesn't legally belong to you. The next call came from Layla herself. "Blocked number," I answered. "Why are you doing this?" she said, her voice tight, quiet. Not like before. No edge this time. Just fear. Doing what? "You're trying to ruin my life." "No," I said. "You used my name. You signed a legal document while I was on morphine in a hospital bed. You weren't dying. You forged my signature." Silence. I let it stretch. "You moved into my apartment while I was unconscious. You sold my things. You deleted my files. You stole from my account, and then you tried to build a new life on credit that you didn't earn. I'll lose everything." "Then maybe," I said, "you should have thought of that before you took everything from me." She didn't reply. I don't think she could. I hung up first. Later that week, Marisol confirmed the fraud dispute was accepted. Layla would either have to refinance the mortgage under her own name or forfeit the property. The bank froze the loan for review. And just like that, the house she stole became a ticking bomb. I didn't celebrate. I didn't throw a party. I just opened the windows in my apartment, finally mine again, and let the autumn air rush in. I sat on my reclaimed couch, opened my laptop, and started writing out everything. Every detail. Every quiet theft, not for revenge, not even for therapy, but because no one would ever tell me again that my story wasn't worth listening to. 2 months passed. 2 cold, quiet, steady months. I didn't hear from Layla again. Not directly. But I saw the echoes of her unraveling everywhere. Her name vanished from the real estate site entirely. No bio. No listings. Her online presence muted. The mortgage she forged with my name was officially revoked after the fraud review completed. The house at 2120 West Maple was quietly relisted. She never posted a thing about it. No photos, no rants, no tears. Layla didn't know how to fall apart publicly. She only knew how to win, or disappear when she couldn't. I guess this time, she chose the latter. One morning I woke to a letter on my doormat, no stamp. No envelope, just a piece of paper folded in half. "Harper, I was wrong. You didn't deserve any of it. I didn't know how to say sorry, so I took everything instead. You have every right to hate me. I hope you don't, but I'll understand if you do. Layla." No excuses, no promises. Just a statement. I read it 3 times, and then I tucked it into the back of my lease folder. Not because I forgave her, but because someday I'd want to remember that even people who destroy things know what they did. Later that week, Mom finally called. Her voice was hesitant. I didn't know what Layla was doing, she said. Not really. Not until it was too late. I didn't answer. She tried again. She told me you asked her to step in, that you were scared to be alone. I didn't question it, I should have. That's on me. I let her speak. I let her fill the silence. When she finished, I said, "You believed her because it was easier than asking me." And she didn't argue. We talked for a while after that, tentative, careful. But something opened, something that had been shut for a long time. She didn't ask me to forgive Layla. She didn't defend her either. And that was enough. I never pressed criminal charges. I didn't need a courtroom to validate the damage. I already had everything back that mattered. My home, my peace, my voice. But most of all, I had something Layla never expected. A spine forged in silence. Hardened by betrayal, tempered by solitude, sharpened by pain. She tried to erase me while I was healing, and instead, I came back written in ink. One Sunday evening, I walked into the apartment and lit a candle. The same one Layla had boxed away because it didn't match her aesthetic. It smelled like cardamom and memory. I sat at my desk, the one I'd reclaimed from storage, and opened a blank document, and I began to write. Not just the story of what happened, but who I'd become. Not a victim, not just a survivor, but a woman who came back to the life that was stolen and took it back with both hands. No scream, no spotlight, just quiet, undeniable justice, and a door no one would ever lock behind me again.